Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. As always on our Tuesday show, we are going to break down every single NFL game that happened on the Sunday slate. See what kind of fantasy takeaways, everything that is relevant. Buy lows, sell highs if your trade deadline hasn't happened in your league yet. Potential waiver wire pickups, all of that jazz. Hype that we should believe, hype that we should fade. We are going to cover all of that in a game-by-game basis. If you like this style of content, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the like on the video while you're down there to help us grow the channel. It is greatly appreciated. Without further ado, let's hop straight into that first game, the Berlin game, a 31-25 Colts victory over the Falcons. And the season of Jonathan Taylor continues. If you drafted him, it really doesn't matter what the rest of your team looks like. You are winning fantasy matchups, I can almost guarantee it. 32 carries, 244 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And then a little 3 for 42 receiving, just a little sugar on top. This guy is absolutely outrageous. Should be in the MVP conversation, absolutely Offensive Player of the Year conversation, leading that charge, of course. And he is just dominating for the Colts every single week. Another story that has been going under the radar, Alec Pierce, another solid game, 4 for 84 and a touchdown. And if you go back and look at some of his game logs over the past few weeks, he is quietly being a very solid fantasy piece. We know they traded away A.D. Mitchell during the trade deadline, so they really truly believe in Alec Pierce. He's going to be a focal point of this offense moving forward. It is him, Tyler Warren, who had a nice game, and Michael Pittman are going to be, the three-headed monster in the passing and receiving game, and then obviously Jonathan Taylor on the ground. Daniel Jones has been looking a little shaky of late, took 7 sacks in this game. A little bit of a credit to Falcons D-line, who has been much improved, but this is 2 weeks in a row where Daniel Jones hasn't quite looked up to snuff. So against a better opponent, I would definitely be worried. Come playoff time, I think this Colts team is a little bit of a step down from those Eagles and Chiefs type of teams. But if they can continue to run the ball like this, it may not matter. On the Falcons side of things, this is just one of the most shaky, inconsistent offenses that I've seen on a week-to-week basis. Drake London does continue to get it done and has been very good over the last 4 weeks. 6 for 104 and a touchdown. Darnell Mooney continues to struggle in a big way. I tweeted out that every target that goes Darnell Mooney's way does not result in a positive thing for the offense. Whether it's a drop, whether he doesn't get situation, whether it's a bad throw, like 8 targets and only one of them is caught is obviously a sign. Darnell Mooney is not getting it done right now. Should not really be owned in any leagues. Kyle Pitts a quiet 2 for 38, but tight end options are pretty slim right now, so you can continue to roll him out in your lineup, albeit you're not feeling very good. And then, of course, Bijan Robinson owners look away. 2 vulture touchdowns by Tyler Algier, which take away from what could have been a very solid Bijan Robinson day. If you add 2 touchdowns to his 84 yards and a couple receptions, that's a very solid day. But Tyler Algier remains a thorn in the side of Bijan Robinson's ceiling, and I don't see any reason why that's not going to continue. They love Tyler Algier in that fourth quarter, finisher, punisher role. Although, when you're losing games, that just seems kind of silly. I would be putting my best players on the field. But I'm not an NFL coach, obviously. I'm making YouTube videos. So, Bijan Robinson, obviously still a stud of a talent. He's awesome. He just needs to start scoring more touchdowns. Hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since week 6. You hate to see it. Drake London continues to smash. Michael Penix continues to look like a below-average quarterback. But I digress. We move on to the next game. In the Toilet Bowl, a 27-20 Jets victory over the Browns. And this was just, pretty much ugly on all fronts outside of Breece Hall, 83 yards on the ground and a 42-yard receiving touchdown on a screen pass, which if you look at Justin Fields' numbers, 54 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. So 42 yards and a touchdown came on one single screen pass, which leaves us with quick math, 12 yards and an interception on his remaining pass attempts. This guy's, there's no way he's going to be starting, weeks coming forward. I know they won, but it was all because of their special teams. A kick return and punt return touchdown in this game. This Jets offense is still really horrible. Garrett Wilson, first game back, re-injured the knee, ended up recording 0 stats in this game, so just not great stuff there. You don't really want to own any Jets right now. I expect Tyrod Taylor to be quarterbacking very soon because Justin Fields just ain't it. But they still managed to win the game against the Browns, who didn't look much better, although they did produce more fantasy points. Judkins, 75 yards and 2 receptions. He's another one of these running backs that I mentioned on these videos that is a touchdown-dependent back. So when he doesn't score, it's not going to be a big enough fantasy day because he's just not involved in the receiving game, nearly enough. Just like J.K. Dobbins, I mentioned on Thursday night, if he's not scoring touchdowns, it's going to be an underwhelming fantasy day. Dylan Gabriel, still continues to look mid to below average in his own right. Jerry Jeudy finally got going, 6 for 78 and a touchdown. Still continues to lead the team in targets with 12. Typically, Gabriel likes to attack his tight ends more. As you can see, Fannin and Njoku, both second and third leading receivers on the day. Jerry Jeudy did get involved here. I would not expect the same production moving forward. In fact, I doubt you can get much, but if you can sell Jerry Jeudy, I easily recommend that. This is probably going to be his best game of the season. I think Harold Fannin, just with his target share, continues to be a solid tight end option. He was questionable coming into this one with a hamstring, but seemed to play just fine. So this is very uninspiring offense, much like the Jets, although they're producing a little bit more, of course. Fannin is kind of the lone guy you're playing week in and week out. Judkins, in good matchups, you're definitely playing, but he is a touchdown-dependent guy. Let's move on. Next game, a surprise shootout and come from behind win, 36-29, Texans over the Jags. And this Texans defense is very good. The 29 points given up is a little deceiving, but they are very solid. So beware of playing fantasy assets against this Texans defense. It typically doesn't end well. But we'll start on the Texans side. Woody Marks played very, very well. 63 yards and a touchdown, operating mostly as a lead back. Did have a slight injury concern during the game, but came back in no problems there. Nico Collins, alpha, 7 for 136. Would have loved him to score a touchdown, but didn't quite happen. Davis Mills was slinging the pill all over. They were behind for much of this game leading into the fourth quarter. As you can see, they scored 26 fourth quarter points. Dalton Schultz, very involved in this come from behind game, 7 for 53 and a touchdown on 11 targets. He is a very solid tight end play. Davis Mills, I think, might be a little bit better than Stroud just for fantasy purposes for these guys. But we'll see once CJ Stroud is back. He should be back next week. Jaden Higgins, nice involvement, 5 for 42 and a touchdowns. It seems they're finally getting these rookies, Higgins and Noel, involved. Of course, Woody Marks out of the backfield. So they're slowly transitioning into getting their better, younger, more explosive players on the field as opposed to the Christian Kirks and Xavier Hutchinsons of the world. On the Jacksonville side, pretty uninspiring stuff. Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter did not play in this game. They did trade for Jacoby Myers, and he had 3 for 41 in his first game. I expect his role to ramp up a little bit. However, Parker Washington continues to play out of the slot, which is kind of where Jacoby Myers has made his money. So Jacoby on the outside is definitely less intriguing to me. But Parker Washington continues to be Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. 3 for 33 and a touchdown in this one. Very nice touchdown catch. Also had a punt return touchdown in this game. So I think Parker Washington is easily a must start, especially with BTJ and Hunter out. But even still, Parker Washington has proved to be a favorite target of Trevor Lawrence. Travis Etienne slogged around 58 yards and a touchdown, added a couple receptions. He's a solid RB2 option on most weeks. But I'll say it, I know this Texans defense is good, like I said. Trevor Lawrence, I just don't know if he's the guy that we were sold on in his Clemson days coming up and first few years in the league. I just don't know if he's quite the guy that we were hoping for. He's not really carrying this franchise and advancing it, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Let's move on. And probably the shocking result of the day by far, a 30-13 Dolphins win over the Bills. Very interesting. The Bills offense just wasn't clicking in this one. The Dolphins pass rush getting after it, playing very inspired, which is very nice to see. And this continues to be a two-man show, like I've been mentioning on the last few weeks. Since Tyreek Hill got injured, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle are going to be the guys. Obviously, this was a huge Achane week. 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 for 51 through the air. A huge, huge boom week. This is what Achane can provide you week in and week out. This Bills defense is definitely worse than we kind of have come to realize. They get kind of overshadowed by the Bills offense doing such good things. but their defense is not very good. Waddle, a solid 5 for 84 and a touchdown. You're starting both of these guys every single week. With Tyreek out, it's such a condensed share between them. They're very good fantasy plays, even with Tua not playing all that good. 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Tua is definitely not playing like a superstar or anything, but Waddle and Achane continue to feast in their roles. Malik Washington caught a touchdown in this one, but I just don't know how big his role is, if it's enough to kind of start on a week-to-week basis. On the Bills side, James Cook, 53 yards on the ground, not great, obviously. Did surprisingly have 5 receptions in this game. Typically, they don't get him involved in the receiving game. So from a PPR standpoint, it was okay. But typically, he's another one of those guys who needs to score a touchdown to produce for the fantasy. And then the receiving options, like I say, week in and week out, it's so hard to pinpoint. Obviously, Shakir is kind of his favorite guy. 7 for 58, so a decent PPR day. Keon Coleman, 3 for 46 and a touchdown, and he's just not very good. He does not pass the eye test. If you watch him, 3 catches on his 8 targets. Just looks uninspired. If he doesn't score that touchdown, it's just another 3 for 46, and you're not happy with it. So I don't think Keon Coleman is really startable moving forward. Dalton Kincaid did get injured in this one, hamstring. He had 2 for 37, and he was a pretty big point of this offense, just from a target share standpoint. If he misses any time, I think Dawson Knox is a decent fill-in, but more so it gives a bump to guys like Khalil Shakir. And Josh Allen continues to kind of play his Houdini role. Doesn't feel like he's running nearly as much. I know he had 31 yards on the ground, but just doesn't feel like he's running as much as he has in previous seasons. I don't know. Bills offense is kind of weird, definitely inconsistent. They've been happy just to run the ball with James Cook, and it's worked for much of the season. But in games like this where, they're not getting anything going, who knows? I'm definitely confused by this Bills offense up to this point. This next one was a sweet battle between some surprise MVP candidates. 28-23, Patriots win over the Buccaneers. And this definitely wasn't Drake May's best game by any means, but he got the job done. 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Matt Collins, 6 for 106, kind of a random day. Kyle Williams, they said he was going to get more involved. Did catch a long 72-yard touchdown, but only had 2 targets. Stephon Diggs, a nice 5 for 46 and a touchdown. But the real story of this game, TreVeyon Henderson finally had his breakout game. 147 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Pretty interesting stuff. Terrell Jennings did, lead the game in the backfield, but ended up getting injured and did not play the rest of the game, which led to them having to play TreVeyon Henderson on most downs. And this is kind of what he did with it. Obviously dominated this game, but I wouldn't bet any money that they continue to lean on Henderson. Like, this Patriots coaching staff has definitely chosen not to trust him or not to use him, in the way us fantasy people want. But the production in this game was undeniable. As for the receiving core, I said, it was kind of all over the board. And I've just said from week to week, it is so hard to predict who is going to get the targets, who's going to get the production. Drake May himself continues to put up very good numbers, but it's very hard to pinpoint which receiver is going, to get the bulk of the work that day. It's very hard to trust starting any of them. On the Buccaneers side, Baker Mayfield just continues to put up the numbers. 273 and 3 touchdowns. A lot of it in a come-from-behind effort. Emeka Egbuka, very solid 6 for 115 and a score. And K. Dotton continues to perform when Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are out. 9 for 82. He's a good tight end fill-in option. And then Tez Johnson has kind of filled in that wide receiver 2 role with those guys being out. 4 for 42 and 2 scores in this game. Rachaad White, a very uninspiring game on the ground. Did have 5 receptions, but definitely in a full split with Sean Tucker, who has just been running the ball better. They are in desperate need of the explosiveness of Bucky Irving to be back in the lineup, but they're being very weird about the reports of when that might be. So we'll have to see if Bucky's back. Till then, Rachaad White's not running the ball very well. A lot of it's going to be on Baker Mayfield's shoulders and this passing game. Next up, a 24-20 Bears win over the Giants, resulting in the firing of Brian Daboll. Jackson Dart left this game with a concussion, although he still had a very good fantasy day. 6 for 66 and 2 rushing scores, adding 242 passing yards. And there was a clear drop-off once Russell Wilson came into this game, so they desperately need Jackson Dart's health back. Obviously, he's a guy who takes a lot of shots, a lot of hits, It's kind of his biggest criticism at this point. We'll see if this concussion kind of makes him slide a bit more. But considering the kind of guy he is, I kind of doubt it. Theo Johnson, Wandale, and Darius Slayton all had decent days on a PPR basis. I think Theo Johnson's a fine tight end start on most weeks. And Wandale's a decent flex receiver guy. He just doesn't have that big of a ceiling. On the ground game, kind of swing back into Tyron Tracy's favor. He ran the ball much better than Devin Singletary in this game. Although I'm not really keen on playing either guy. This Giants offense is in dire straits if Russ starts next week. Jackson Dart, they need him back in a bad way. On the Bears side, it just continues to kind of look ugly. I know it was a snowing game, all that, but you play in Chicago, you ought to know that. DeAndre Swift back from injury, 80 yards on 13 carries. Manungai did get a score in this game, but the reports were they were going to go series for series, and then whoever got the hot hand was going, to kind of take over, and that happened to be Swift in this game. I expect that to be their kind of routine moving forward. Split carries, see who has the hot hand, and ride them out, which is very frustrating for fantasy because you don't know who's going to get the hot hand. Caleb adding 63 yards and a score on the ground is very, very encouraging to see. He is definitely a good athlete, and he is showing that on a week-to-week basis. Rome Odunze bounced back after the 0. Kind of expected that. 6 for 86 and a score. An unfortunate 0 out of DJ Moore on 4 targets. I don't know what the chemistry with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore is. You feel like it should be better, but oftentimes it does not look very good, to be honest with you. Colson Loveland continued to out-target Cole Kmet despite him being back from injury. So I'm not jumping at the seams to start Loveland, but definitely encouraging use for the weeks to come. Next up, a 27-19 Ravens victory over the Vikings. The Ravens are starting to get it going. It didn't look super pretty in this game, but they are starting to roll. Lamar just didn't have to do much. 176 yards and a touchdown, adding 36 on the ground. Derrick Henry, 75 yards. I'm really expecting him to slowly start get going once these colder months come. And the pass attack was really spread out. Of course, Zay Flowers led the team, 4 for 75. But outside of that, a bunch of guys getting targets and getting receptions. Mark Andrews catches the touchdown, so comes home. But if he stops scoring touchdowns, he's not going to be a very good fantasy play. But there's not really a ton of tight end options like I mentioned. Really waiting for this Ravens offense to gel. This is Lamar's second game back from injury. I'm hoping things really start to ramp up for them and they become, kind of a fantasy wagon down the stretch. On the Vikings side of things, JJ McCarthy is not looking good, and I'm a little worried if I'm a Justin Jefferson owner, Jordan Addison owner. Jalen Naylor had the big game in this one, 5 for 124 and a touchdown. But on all fronts, I'm very worried. JJ McCarthy is just not a good enough thrower of the football. This is, a huge step down from Darnold of last season. And Justin Jefferson is slowly realizing that. Got the 12 targets, 4 receptions. Addison had 11 targets, 3 receptions. And very evidently, a lot of that is on the quarterback and his, just missed throws. I would be definitely worried about my Vikings players moving forward. If you can sell Justin Jefferson on name cachet alone for kind of another wide receiver 1, I would definitely look into that. McCarthy has me worried. Aaron Jones continues to play well on the ground, 47 yards and a touchdown. Just have to wonder if he didn't get injured very early in the season, if he would just having a very, very solid season. But Aaron Jones is kind of the lone guy I'm, willing and happy to play on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, you're starting Justin Jefferson, but it doesn't feel good when McCarthy is quarterbacking. Another surprise win, a 17-7 victory, Saints over the Panthers, and Tyler Shuck gets his first career NFL win. Not the most inspiring thing. I'd say the Panthers more lost this game than anything, but proved very good fantasy-wise for Chris Olave, 5 for 104 and a score. Jawan Johnson, 4 for 92 and a score. And you expected Johnson to kind of step up into a bigger role with Rashid Shaheed being traded away. Alvin Kamara, probably his best game of the season outside of maybe an early one. Still doesn't score many touchdowns, so that's a big bummer. But 83 yards on the ground, 3 receptions, 32 yards. Maybe he can kind of pick up his game a little with Shuck at quarterback. It's going to continue to be condensed between Olave and Johnson, so I think they're solid starts moving forward. And the Saints team is one that's going to be behind in most games. So the Saints continue to be a bad team, but you do know where the targets are going most weeks. On the Panthers side of things, Rico Dowdle, we were expecting a big game. He got the workload for it, just didn't come to fruition. The Saints defense knew the Panthers game plan and really honed in on shutting him down. Did get 53 yards, a score, and 3 receptions. So very solid fantasy day, but we were expecting a little bit bigger. And Bryce Young just kind of prevents this offense from reaching any sort of ceiling or peak. Tedero McMillan, 5 for 60. He passes the eye test. He's a very good player, but Bryce Young's inconsistencies really put a damper on that. Jatavian Sanders, 5 for 32. Not really another playable receiving option on this team. They want to run this through Rico Dowdle. I think they'll continue to do so. He's a very good start every week, but Bryce Young is just so limiting to the potential of this offense. Next up, a 44-22 Lions win over the Commanders, and a very obvious smash spot for the Lions. They did exactly what we thought they would do. 44 points and all sorts of fantasy points to go around. Jahmyr Gibbs finally has a huge day. 142 and 2 scores on the ground, adding 3 for 30 and a score through the air. Love to see it. Jameson Williams, 6 for 119 and a score. Dan Campbell did take over play calling in this game and looked like they made a clear effort to get Williams going. Maybe it's a sign of things to come. We'll have to wait and see. Amon-Ra does what he does, 5 for 58 and a score. If this game was more competitive, he would have definitely been more involved. So the blowout kind of resulted in a lower scoring game for St. Brown. But obviously the Lions pieces against a bad defense are going to smash. I have to believe Dan Campbell is going to continue calling plays. We'll have to see if JMO gets going. That'll be an interesting sign moving forward. And then this Washington team is just in a bad place. McLaurin's obviously hurt. Jaden Daniels is obviously hurt. They can't get anything going on the ground. Chris Rodriguez scores the lone rushing score, making JCM basically valueless for fantasy. Treylon Burks was their leading receiver. Yes, you heard me. The first round bust wide receiver from the Titans a few years back. That's kind of where we're at. Debo did end up scoring a touchdown, kind of saving the day. But I really do not want any part of this Washington offense until Jaden Daniels gets back, if he does. Indications he might come back in a couple of weeks, but we'll have to see. I don't think they're going to be in any position to be making the playoffs. Zach Ertz, 4 for 54. If you have to start him at tight end, I guess, but I'd rather take a shot on a guy with better upside. Not loving this Commanders offense. They are in deep trouble. And here, another game that shaped up to be a very nice shootout. 42-26, Rams over the 49ers. And a couple of very solid offenses and a couple of poor defenses. 49ers much worse than the Rams. The Rams defense isn't that bad, but just a couple of high-powered offenses, and Matthew Stafford is very clearly gunning for that, passing touchdown leader number. Another 4 touchdowns in this game, making him obviously extremely valuable. Devontae Adams, 6 for 77 and a score. Puka Nacua, 5 for 64 and a score. They just weren't really needed all that much. Devontae Adams did get hurt at the end of this game with an oblique injury. We'll have to see what his status is. He tried to come back in, but it just really wasn't happening for him. Kyron Williams in a pure split with Blake Corum. They are going series for series now, which is definitely a little concerning. Puts a definite cap to the ceiling of Kyron Williams. Despite scoring 2 touchdowns in this game, that's obviously not going to happen every game. So when he doesn't score, Corum eating into his workload is not great coming down the stretch. But I continue to say if the Rams' collection of tight ends was one tight end, it would be one of the greatest fantasy assets of all time. 4 for 41 and a touchdown, Colby Parkinson. 3 for 33, Tyler Higbee. 1 for 32, Terrence Ferguson. 2 for 8 and a touchdown. I don't want to add all that up right now, but that's multiple scores, 10 receptions, over 100 yards. If that was one tight end that their collective tight end room is creating, it might be the greatest fantasy asset of the season. But unfortunately, it's spread out between 4 guys, so we can't really play any of them on a week-to-week basis. We don't know who's going to get the touchdowns. But seriously, I wish that was all condensed to one tight end player. It would be absolutely phenomenal. I digress. The 49ers side of things, Christian McCaffrey continues to have a struggle on the ground. 30 yards on 12 carries. But luckily, he's basically a wide receiver 1. 8 for 66 on team-high 10 targets. It's not the greatest fantasy day you've ever seen, but a solid 17, 18 points you're going to take every time. George Kittle finally got going. 9 for 84 and a touchdown in this game. Juwan Jennings also 6 for 71 and a score. They're going to be the clear three offensive threats moving forward. Kittle, Jennings, and McCaffrey. Mac Jones continues to play efficient football. We'll have to see Brock Purdy's back. We keep getting weird reports about Brock Purdy. There's a very good chance he doesn't play for a while. So Mac Jones is kind of continuing to run this show pretty solidly. Kittle, Jennings, McCaffrey, startable every week. Let's move on. And next up, a 44-22 victory. Seahawks over the Cardinals, and the Seahawks team continues to dominate. They did so on defense in this one, so Sam Darnold only had to throw the ball 12 times. But even still, Jackson Smith and Jigba, 5 for 93 and a touchdown. There was again an even split in the backfield, 14 carries for Charbonnet and Walker each, 83 yards and a touchdown for Sharp, 67 yards for Walker. So like I've been saying every week, Kenneth Walker is a very suspect, uncomfortable start in your fantasy lineups. He's just not getting in the end zone. He's not getting a ton of work in the receiving game. It's just not coming to fruition. Again, the Seahawks didn't really need to throw the ball in this game, so newly acquired Rashid Shaheed only had one target, but I expect him to get more involved in games that are a little bit more competitive. On the Cardinals side of things, Jacoby Brissett continues to be very good for the fantasy weapons on this team. Trey McBride, 9 for 127 and a touchdown. Marvin Harrison, 3 for 33 and a touchdown on 12 targets. These guys are going to continue to be target hogs with Jacoby Brissett at QB, which we know will be for the next few weeks because Kyler Murray got put on the IR. On the ground game, they are desperately in need of Trey Benson to be healthy. Really James Conner, but that's not going to happen this season. But Trey Benson should be off the IR in the coming weeks, and it is really just a carousel right now between Bam Knight, Amari DiMercado, Michael Carter, whoever gets the hot hand, and honestly, it's really none of them at this point. They got down so early in this game, it was really on Jacoby Brissett to sling the rock. But I think this is good for McBride and Marv. They are going to continue to thrive for fantasy purposes. And Sunday Night Football was a bit of a dud. 25-10 victory, Chargers over the Steelers. Chargers looked pretty good in this game. Kamani Vidal, 95 yards and a touchdown on 25 carries. Continuing to operate as the workhorse until Amarian Hampton gets back. You're just going to continue to slot him as your RB2. Obviously, he's going to have down games like last week, but he is capable of this as well. Ladd McConkey finally showing why we paid up a second, third-round pick on this guy. 4 for 107 and a touchdown. He has been very, very sneaky solid over the last month or so. Keenan Allen, a quiet day. Steelers like to play a lot of man-to-man, and Keenan Allen really feasts in zone. Also games he is up a lot. He's not going to play a lot. They're going to, run the ball with multiple tight end sets, and he's just not even going to be on the field. So Keenan Allen is a shaky flex outside of a couple matchups. Quentin Johnson, 5 for 42 on 10 targets. Just not really inspiring. Ladd McConkey's the lone guy who continues to get it done when the ball is in his hands. Rondé Gadsden did leave this game with a knee injury in the second quarter. He's getting an MRI to see the extent of that, but I expect him to potentially miss a little bit of time, unfortunately. On the Steelers side of things, I've been saying every week now, I don't want any part of this Steelers offense. They are in the Jets category of offense for me, outside of Jaylen Warren, who himself even had a quiet game because he didn't score. 70 yards on the ground, 2 for 21 through the air. But he's literally the only piece I want on this offense. Everyone else is so, easy to have a quiet game just because they don't have very many weapons. Outside of DK Metcalf, he's getting, double teamed, safety over the top every play. So just doesn't look great, especially now that they played pretty poorly on primetime. A lot of people are going to be off the Steelers, probably for good reason. Jaylen Warren, the only piece I like. Let's head over to Monday Night Football. And finally, on Monday Night Football, another slog of a game on primetime. We have just been getting low-scoring primetime games recently. And these two defenses are pretty good, but the offenses just did not look very good at all. On the Eagles side, Jalen Hurts does just enough, although it doesn't look good. Like I said, 183 yards and a touchdown, adding 27 yards on the ground. Devontae Smith is clearly the number one guy right now, 4 for 69 and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, 2 for 13 on 3 targets. Obviously not great. Dallas Goedert gets involved, 4 for 43. Saquon Barkley continues to have a hard time rushing for efficiency. It is just not the same behind that offensive line this season. 60 yards on 22 carries. Did add some good receiving work, 3 for 41 to save the day a little, but definitely discouraging for Barkley owners. Just not inspiring stuff. You know, the Eagles could really have this high-powered offense, but they don't care. They keep winning games playing this ugly style of football, and, you know, whatever works for them, but it is very frustrating as a fantasy football fan. On the Packers side, somehow it was even worse. Jordan Love, 176 yards on 36 attempts, just not very good. It was very obvious they were missing Tucker Kraft. He tore his ACL last week, of course, but they were missing his kind of run after the catch, his explosiveness in the pass game. Romeo Doubs also got injured in this one, had a chest injury, did not return in the second half, so we'll have to see what his status is. Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks kind of were the bulk of the route runners and target getters in this one. Matthew Golden, the rookie, didn't play, so we'll kind of have to see what the injury report is looking like for these receivers to see who we are going to want to play. Luke Musgrave was a popular fill-in, went 3 for 23, just didn't get the ball thrown his way a whole ton. Josh Jacobs kind of carried the load, 74 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries, adding 5 for 33 through the air. So Josh Jacobs was pretty much the lone piece that came home in this one outside of Devontae Smith on the Eagles side. Just a sloppy kind of defensive affair. You know, both teams really playing down. They could have these high-powered offenses, but they just really choose not to do so. Very unfortunate for fantasy purposes. That is just how it is at the end of the day. And that has been our Week 10 recap. We are getting into the thick of it now. Playoff implications for fantasy are here. Good luck. I hope you are, doing very well in your leagues. As always, smash that subscribe button if you're new here, so help grow the channel. Like the video, comment down below your biggest takeaways from Week 10. Stay tuned for this week's Week 11 preview so you can get ready for the games coming up next week. They just keep rolling. We're already 10 weeks into the season. It is crazy. Make sure you subscribe. Appreciate the love. Peace.